Good morning, Kate here, bringing you this week's Monday mission, and this one is all about complaining. Complaining. I might actually surprise you in this one because I'm going to give you a couple ways that complaining is actually a good thing, and we can kind of look at it in a different light. So we're going to talk about the brain a little bit. We're going to talk about what complaining is, and then, like I said, two ways that it's actually beneficial or a good thing in this one. So the one thing I want to talk about is the brain, going into the brain. So remember how we talked about those sled riding hills, right? So if we think about and do the same thing over and over and over and over again, we make that really efficient sledding hill in our brain, neural pathways. Okay, so we make that pathway, and so it's super easy to go back to that pathway because now it's had all this practice and all the groundwork has been laid, right? Another way to say that is Donald Hebb had kind of put this phrase together, and it's called neurons that fire together wire together. So basically what that's saying is that if you have the neurons going together, negative, looking at something negative or negative habit or a habit that you don't want, but you keep doing it over and over again, they're going to continue to fire together and become super efficient like that sledding hill. So it's just something to keep in mind as we're talking about complaining, because complaining can actually alter the structure of your brain, right? It can really create those pathways that we may not necessarily want to be there. So we want to have some boundaries around complaining, okay? But there are a couple ways that people complain. One way may be for attention seeking. So they're seeking attention through their complaining. Maybe they want sympathy, or they want your attention of how awful their life is, right? So they're doing it to kind of get attention. Then you have those people who are chronic complainers and sort of just live in that constant state of finding the negative and complaining about everything, okay? And then, and someone may be all three of these, right? But another type of complaining is sort of that low EQ. We talk about IQ, EQ would be sort of emotional intelligence. So that low EQ complaining, which is when they're not even interested in your opinion, so they're not even complaining to get your suggestions or, get any helpful information from you. They're simply just complaining to complain. So the reason that we do complain, though, and humans really are sort of wired to do it, is that our brain has something called a negative bias, negativity bias. And so our brain perceives the negative much easier than something positive. And the reason for that, we can think about going all the way back to our brain was developed for survival, right? So we're constantly scanning the environment for anything that could be a threat or could potentially be something negative, right? So that's sort of what we look for. That's just what we're sort of designed to look for. So knowing that may help you realize, like, oh, it's not me. I'm not necessarily like this awful negative person. It's just what my brain is wired to do, right? So that's always helped me to kind of think, oh, well, that's just what my brain does. So now I can think of other ways to sort of interrupt those patterns and those sled riding hills. So I do want to talk about, though, if we stifle complaining, okay? So I think, we did one of our missions about toxic positivity, and I think that can be one of those areas where we almost shame ourselves for complaining, which again is something that our brain sort of is naturally looking to do, but we shame ourselves for it and we try to just stifle it and push it down and not even look at it, right? We just want to do those positive affirmations that are just going to completely get rid of any need to complain or desire to complain about anything. And we know that that's not true, and it actually just leads to, those feelings of shame and judgment. And it can actually have psychological effects on our body if we're stifling those emotions. We've talked about that, right? So what are some good things about complaining? Because we don't want to just completely stifle it, right? But we don't want to be a chronic complainer to the point where it's actually affecting us, affecting our body and our brain structure, right? So a couple ways to think about complaining is, one is that it's really great social connection, right? And that's another thing that we're sort of just ingrained to look for and to desire is social connection as humans. That's, we want to feel connected. We want to feel that we belong. And one of the ways to do that often is through complaining, complaining about your job with your coworker and, complaining about politics or whatever it is. You can really have some social connections with complaining. But the way I kind of want you to look at that, that social connection piece, is that it's a release of a stressor, right? And it's sort of that venting that we want to do, right? We're not really looking for a solution. We don't want someone to solve the problem. We just want to vent and let that all out, okay? And that's a good thing. And then if we're doing it socially and someone else has the same opinion or feels the same way, then they're validating us, and that social validation feels good. So it's actually, healthy to have that connection, and it's healthy to get all of that stress out. We just want to make sure we're not living there, okay? And, we're not staying in that chronic state of complaining and not doing anything about it. So a lot of the way that I process things that happen, I'm very quick to go negative. I'm very quick to maybe complain about it, or, it's not fair, or it's this, or it's that. And I still allow myself to do that. It does give me social connection. It gets those feelings validated, because our feelings are often very valid. But I don't want to live there. I don't want to stay in that place of chronic complaining. Like, I want to eventually look at it and see how I can get out of that feeling and get out of that state of wanting to complain about it. So the best way to look at it is to look at your complaining as data. Okay, so remember how I talk about all of our feelings are data, things that happen in our life and how we react to them, what our feelings and what our thoughts are about them are all data to tell us either what we need to work on, what areas we need support in. It's information, very useful information. So for example, if you're complaining about having too much to do, and you never have any time, you're always doing something for other people and you never have any time for yourself, okay, the data might be that you need to look at your boundaries. And we talked about boundaries in another mission. So that may be a time where you need to be like, you know what, I am having some difficulty saying no to things. I'm kind of putting too much on my plate, and I really need to revisit my boundaries here because it's impacting me. I'm finding myself sort of complaining about it all the time. Or let's say that you're complaining about always being tired and having no energy, and you're just constantly fatigued and exhausted. And that may be data that you need to look at your health, and you need to see, what kind of foods am I eating that are maybe draining my energy? What foods can I add in that give me energy and support my energy? Or am I moving my body? Has that changed? Am I not moving it as much as I used to? Or do I need to start really trying to focus on moving my body and my sleep? Maybe that's data that you need to be looking at your sleep patterns and, maybe turning off the technology an hour before bed, or, giving yourself that wind down time so that you do fall asleep when you need to get that a decent amount of sleep in. So whatever it is, but complaining about energy and fatigue may be a sign that you need to look at your health, right? Complaining about your spouse all the time, or your partner, and complaining that they never do anything and you have to do everything and you have to take it on. That might be another conversation about boundaries that you need to have. It might be a time where you need to look at, am I communicating that I need help with these things? Or do I just expect them? We did a mission about the manual. Is it in my manual that they should just know to do all these things for me? And then they're not, so I'm going to complain about them not doing it. So maybe that's data that you need to really revisit some of those conversations and make sure that those things are clearly communicated. All right, so that's what we've learned today, is that complaining over and over and over again, getting in that sledding hill, can actually change the structure of your brain and can impact you physically, can impact your health. But We just don't want to stay there. There actually are some good things about complaining. It can give us some social validation, some social connection, gets that stress out of the body, and it's data for us to be curious about, to see what areas maybe we need to look at and start working on. Okay, so your mission today, should you choose to accept it this week, is to just look at your areas and where you find yourself complaining, and think about what you maybe need to look at in that area to improve whatever it is you find yourself complaining about. Okay, so I hope this was a good one. As always, share with me anything that comes up with you this week, and we'll talk soon. Bye.